I was a successful software engineer in Boston, enjoying my career and the life I had built with my wife Amanda over our 4 years of marriage. Despite my happiness, there was always one dark cloud hovering over us. Barbara, my mother-in-law. She never thought I was good enough for her daughter. On my 31st birthday, Amanda insisted on celebrating at an upscale restaurant downtown. When we arrived, Barbara was waiting with a special gift box. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out. My husband James recorded my reaction on his phone, eager to capture my devastation. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I turned the tables on the woman who tried to destroy my life. I grew up in a middle-class family in Pennsylvania, raised with solid values and a strong work ethic. My parents taught me to be honest, reliable, and to always stand up for myself. These principles guided me through college, where I studied computer science and graduated near the top of my class. After graduation, I landed a job at a tech startup in Philadelphia. But when a better opportunity came up in Boston, I jumped at the chance to advance my career. Boston was intimidating at first. The tech scene was competitive, but I worked hard and quickly established myself as a valuable team member. My social life, however, was practically non-existent. I spent most evenings coding or learning new programming languages. That all changed when I attended an industry conference downtown. Amanda was presenting a session on emerging software architectures. She was brilliant, articulate, and when she smiled, the whole room seemed brighter. During the networking event afterward, I gathered my courage and introduced myself. We clicked, immediately discussing coding paradigms and laughing about tech industry quirks. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and made plans for coffee. Our romance moved quickly. Amanda was everything I had ever wanted in a partner: intelligent, ambitious, and caring. Within 6 months, we were discussing marriage. She seemed to value my dedication and honesty, while I admired her drive and creativity. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. Meeting Barbara was my first glimpse into the complications that lay ahead. Amanda arranged dinner at an exclusive country club where her mother was a long-standing member. Barbara arrived, dressed impeccably, dripping with subtle jewelry that probably cost more than my car. Her smile never reached her eyes as she shook my hand. Throughout dinner, Barbara interrogated me about my background, career prospects, and financial situation. Each answer seemed to disappoint her, though she maintained a veneer of politeness. When Amanda excused herself to take a phone call, Barbara leaned forward. "Amanda has always been exceptional," she said. "She could have anyone you know. Doctors, executives, even that young senator who asked her out last year." I assured Barbara that I would always do my best for Amanda. Her response was a thin smile, and I suppose marrying down keeps life interesting for some women. Despite Barbara's obvious disapproval, Amanda and I proceeded with our wedding plans. We wanted something intimate and meaningful, rather than the lavish society event Barbara had envisioned. This created our first major conflict, with Barbara threatening to withhold her contribution unless we moved the ceremony to her country club. Amanda stood her ground, surprising both of us, and we had the wedding we wanted. Our early marriage was blissful. We bought a modest but charming townhouse, worked hard at our careers, and began planning for a family. Weekend mornings were spent drinking coffee on our small patio, discussing our dreams for the future. We talked about having 2 children, taking family vacations to national parks, and eventually starting our own tech company together. The trouble began subtly. Barbara started insisting on weekly mother-daughter lunches that increasingly extended into dinner. Amanda would return home different, somehow more critical and distant. The changes were slight at first, barely noticeable, but they accumulated over time. Then Barbara began showing up unannounced at our home, offering unsolicited advice about everything from our furniture to our financial decisions. She rearranged our living room while we were at work, claiming it had better flow now. She replaced our carefully chosen art prints with expensive pieces she thought more suitable. I tried to express my discomfort to Amanda, but she dismissed my concerns. "Mom just wants to help," she would say. "She has great taste and connections. We should appreciate her input." The first major conflict came during the holidays. We had planned to visit my family in Pennsylvania, a trip we had discussed for months. 3 days before our departure, Amanda announced that Barbara had booked a surprise luxury ski vacation for the three of us in Aspen. "But we already promised my family," I reminded her. "They are expecting us." "Your family will understand," Amanda replied. "This is a 5-star resort, Gregory. We cannot pass this up." The argument that followed was our worst yet. I felt bulldozed and disrespected while Amanda accused me of being ungrateful and rigid. In the end, Amanda went to Aspen with her mother, while I spent a lonely Christmas with my disappointed family. When she returned, sunburned and excited, she acted as if nothing had happened. I swallowed my hurt and tried to move forward. As we entered our second year of marriage, Barbara announced she was moving closer to help with any grandchildren that might come along. She purchased a luxury condo just 15 minutes from our home. The unannounced visits increased dramatically, with Barbara letting herself in with the key Amanda had given her without my knowledge. I would come home from work to find them whispering in the kitchen, falling silent when I entered. At dinner, they shared private jokes and referenced conversations I had not been part of. Amanda began consulting her mother about decisions we should have made together as a couple. Barbara found subtle ways to undermine me in my own home. She would question my career choices, suggesting that Amanda could do better with her connections. "William Peterson, my golf partner Harold's son, is looking for a marketing director at his firm," she would say to Amanda while I was in the room. "The salary would be double what Gregory makes, and the benefits are excellent." The financial interference grew more direct. Barbara began offering us money, always with strings attached. She proposed paying for a house renovation, but only if we used her preferred contractor and followed her design choices. She offered to fund a luxury vacation, but insisted on joining us. Each gift came with control, and Amanda seemed blind to the manipulation. My wife's behavior gradually changed. She adopted her mother's critical attitude, commenting on my clothes, my friends, and my hobbies. She spent more evenings with Barbara than with me, returning home only to sleep. When I tried to discuss our deteriorating relationship, Amanda would accuse me of jealousy or insecurity. "You have always been too sensitive," she would say. "Mom just has high standards. Maybe you should try harder to meet them instead of complaining all the time." I suggested marriage counseling, but Amanda refused. "We do not need strangers telling us how to fix our marriage," she said. "If you would just make more effort with Mom, everything would be fine." I planned special date nights hoping to reconnect, but they were invariably interrupted by calls or texts from Barbara claiming some minor emergency. My heart-to-heart talks with Amanda went nowhere, with her becoming defensive or dismissive. The turning point came when I discovered deleted text messages between Amanda and Barbara. I had borrowed Amanda's tablet to check my email when notifications kept appearing from her mother. I did not mean to snoop, but one message preview caught my eye. "Gregory will never know. Trust me." Against my better judgment, I opened the message thread. What I found shattered any remaining illusions about our marriage. They had been discussing me for months, with Barbara referring to me as the anchor dragging Amanda down, and Amanda agreeing that she had married beneath her potential. Further investigation revealed financial documents showing a joint account between Amanda and Barbara that I had known nothing about. They had purchased an investment property together using some funds that I believed were going into our joint savings for a future family. When confronted, Amanda admitted that her mother thought I was holding her back, and they were creating security separate from me. That night, as Amanda slept, I made a decision. I would not be blindsided again. The next morning, I consulted a divorce attorney explaining the situation and seeking advice. The lawyer recommended gathering documentation and securing my personal assets while considering my options. Over the next 2 months, I quietly prepared for all possibilities. I documented the financial discrepancies, secured copies of important documents, and set up a separate bank account to protect my recent inheritance from my grandfather. I began working longer hours, partly to advance my career and partly to build financial independence. I also started therapy to help process the betrayal and prepare emotionally for whatever came next. Amanda seemed oblivious to my preparations, perhaps too caught up in her schemes with Barbara to notice the changes in me. I maintained a facade of normalcy while quietly strengthening my position. I was not seeking revenge. I simply wanted to protect myself from further manipulation. As my 31st birthday approached, I noticed Amanda acting strangely. She seemed unusually enthusiastic about celebrating, insisting on dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. This was surprising given her recent complaints about my wasteful spending on much smaller purchases. Mom has arranged everything, she said with poorly concealed excitement. Just wear your best suit. This will be a birthday to remember. Her words were more prophetic than she knew. While I had my suspicions about their plans, I still held a sliver of hope that reconciliation might be possible. Perhaps this dinner was an olive branch, an attempt to repair our fractured relationship. The day of my birthday arrived, and Amanda was jittery with anticipation. She changed outfits 3 times and checked her phone constantly. When we pulled up to the restaurant, I noticed Barbara's distinctive Mercedes already parked in front. My heart sank as I spotted several other familiar cars. This was not an intimate birthday dinner, this was an audience. The maitre d' led us to a private dining area where Barbara sat at the head of a long table surrounded by Amanda's friends and a few of her cousins. Her husband James, a quiet man who always followed Barbara's lead, stood nearby with his phone ready. Barbara's smug expression told me everything I needed to know. This was an ambush. The guest of honor has arrived, Barbara announced as we entered. Everyone turned to look at me, their expressions a mix of anticipation and discomfort. Amanda guided me to a seat directly across from her mother. The waiters immediately brought expensive champagne, pouring generous glasses for everyone. Barbara stood raising her glass in a toast. To new beginnings, she said, looking directly at me with a predatory smile. And to closing chapters that no longer serve us. The table responded with awkward mumbles as they raised their glasses. Amanda was practically vibrating with nervous energy beside me. James positioned himself for a better camera angle, his phone pointed directly at my face. After the toast, Barbara clapped her hands. "Now for the gift," she declared. A waiter appeared carrying an ornate gift box tied with a silk ribbon. It was placed before me with ceremonial precision. "Go ahead, open it," Barbara urged. "I think you will find it is exactly what this situation needs." The room fell silent as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of tissue paper, were legal documents. Divorce papers, to be specific. They were already filled out with terms heavily favoring Amanda, including claims to my inheritance and personal assets that should never have been considered marital property. James zoomed in with his camera, capturing what they expected to be my moment of devastation. Barbara watched with barely contained glee, while Amanda looked on with an expression caught between triumph and uncertainty. Inside, my emotions roiled like a storm, a mixture of hurt, anger, and vindication. All my suspicions had been confirmed in the most public and humiliating way possible. Yet outwardly, I remained calm, methodically reviewing the papers before me. "What do you think of my gift?" Barbara prompted when I did not immediately react. "It is from all of us, really." We thought it was time to end this charade of a marriage. I looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. "Actually, Barbara, I want to thank you." Her triumphant smile faltered. This was clearly not the reaction she had anticipated. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my own pen, a nice one that had been a gift from my grandfather. "This is perfect timing." I continued, signing each page with deliberate care. "What are you doing?" Amanda asked, her voice rising slightly. "I am accepting your gift," I replied calmly. "In fact, I consulted my own attorney 3 months ago. These terms are actually quite favorable to me, considering what my lawyer advised I could get." Barbara's face flushed red. "What are you talking about?" I finished signing the last page with a flourish and slid the papers back into the box. "I have been documenting your financial manipulations for months," I explained. "The hidden accounts, the diverted funds, the investment property purchased with money from our joint savings." Amanda went pale. "You knew about that, I know about everything," I replied. "Including the texts where you and your mother discussed how I was holding you back. The room had gone completely silent. James had lowered his phone, no longer recording. I stood up slowly. "What you do not know is that I filed my own paperwork this morning, including evidence of financial impropriety and hidden assets. My attorney advised that your actions constituted financial infidelity, which significantly strengthens my position." I looked directly at Barbara. "You really should have consulted a better lawyer before drawing up these papers. They do not account for the legal implications of your daughter's actions." Barbara's smug expression had transformed into one of growing alarm. "You cannot possibly prove anything," she sputtered. I smiled for the first time that evening. "Bank records, text messages, property documents. I have copies of everything." I straightened my tie and picked up my coat. "Thank you all for coming to witness this moment. I appreciate your participation in my liberation." As I turned to leave, Amanda grabbed my arm. "Gregory, wait. We can talk about this." I gently removed her hand. "We are well beyond talking, Amanda. You chose your path when you conspired with your mother instead of working on our marriage." The restaurant fell silent as I walked out, head held high. Behind me, I could hear Barbara frantically making a phone call, likely to her attorney. James stood frozen, still holding his phone. Amanda called my name once more, but I did not look back. As the cool night air hit my face outside the restaurant, the enormity of what had just happened washed over me. My marriage was over-ended in the most public and humiliating way possible. Yet somehow I felt lighter than I had in years. I drove directly to my friend Thomas's house, the one friend who had consistently expressed concerns about Barbara's influence on my marriage. When I arrived, the emotional dam finally broke. Thomas sat with me for hours as I alternated between tears of grief and sighs of relief. He offered his guest room for as long as I needed it, an act of kindness I will never forget. That first night of freedom was a strange mixture of sorrow and hope. While I mourned the end of what I had once believed was a loving marriage, I also felt the first stirrings of liberation from a situation that had become increasingly toxic. The next morning, my attorney confirmed that Barbara's theatrical stunt had actually worked in my favor. By signing the papers in front of witnesses, after revealing my knowledge of their financial deception, I had strengthened my legal position considerably. The fact that James had been recording added an additional layer of evidence regarding their intentions. The legal proceedings that followed were less dramatic but equally validating. Barbara hired an expensive legal team, but they could not dispute the documented evidence of financial misconduct. During discovery, even more hidden assets came to light, further benefiting my case. Amanda made several attempts at reconciliation, but only after realizing the legal and financial implications of her actions. Her tearful apologies rang hollow, focused more on the consequences she faced than on the hurt she had caused. I maintained firm boundaries, communicating only through our attorneys. The judge, an older woman with little patience for manipulation, viewed my evidence with a critical eye and ruled largely in my favor. While I did not seek to punish Amanda financially, I insisted on a fair division of our legitimate marital assets and protection of my inheritance and personal property. The investment property that Amanda and Barbara had purchased with diverted funds was sold with the proceeds appropriately distributed according to the source of the funds. In the aftermath of the divorce, I made the decision to leave Boston entirely. The city held too many painful memories, and I needed a fresh start. I accepted a job offer in Austin, where the tech scene was thriving and the cost of living would allow me to rebuild my savings more quickly. The first few months were difficult. Despite the justification for my actions, I struggled with feelings of failure and betrayal. I experienced periods of depression, questioning my judgment and worth. Had there been signs I missed earlier in our relationship? Could I have done something differently? Therapy became my lifeline during this period. My counselor helped me recognize that while I was not perfect, the manipulation and betrayal I had experienced were not my fault. She helped me process my anger and grief in healthy ways, gradually moving toward acceptance and healing. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I rediscovered old hobbies that had fallen by the wayside during my marriage. I joined a local hiking club, started playing guitar again, and even took up photography. Through these activities, I began building a new social circle, one based on shared interests rather than obligation or manipulation. I threw myself into my work, using it as a healthy distraction from my personal turmoil. My focus and dedication led to a promotion within 6 months. The increased responsibility and salary boosted my confidence and financial security. With encouragement from new friends and colleagues, I eventually started developing my own software product on the side, laying the groundwork for the company I had always dreamed of starting. Almost exactly 1 year after the birthday dinner fiasco, I had an unexpected encounter with Barbara. I was back in Boston briefly for a conference and ran into her at a coffee shop near my old office. She spotted me first, her expression darkening as I ordered my coffee. She approached with the same intimidating presence I remembered, but something had changed. I was no longer affected by her attempts at dominance. When she tried to engage me in conversation about the divorce, implying that I had somehow taken advantage of Amanda, I simply smiled. "I wish you both well, Barbara," I said calmly. "But I have moved on to a much healthier life." Her power over me had always been an illusion, maintained only by my desire to please Amanda and keep the peace. Now that I had broken free from that dynamic, she could not touch me. The realization must have dawned on her as well, because for once Barbara had nothing to say as I walked away. My healing journey taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth and boundaries. I learned to recognize red flags in relationships and to value myself enough to walk away from toxic situations. Most importantly, I discovered that happiness does not depend on meeting others' expectations, but on being true to myself and my own values. On the anniversary of that fateful birthday dinner, I celebrated my freedom with a small gathering of new friends at my apartment in Austin. As we enjoyed good food and conversation, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was from Amanda, a long message expressing regret for her actions and acknowledgement of her mother's unhealthy influence. I read it once, acknowledging the closure it offered, then responded with a brief but compassionate note, wishing her well in finding her own path separate from her mother's controlling presence. Then I put down my phone and rejoined my friends, focusing on the present moment and the promising future ahead. Looking back now, I realize that what seemed like the worst birthday of my life was actually the beginning of something much better, a chance to reclaim my identity and build a life based on authentic connections and personal integrity. I know now that I deserve relationships built on mutual respect rather than manipulation, and I will never again compromise my self-worth for someone else's approval. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship that was diminishing your sense of self? Did you recognize the red flags early? Or like me? Did it take a dramatic wake-up call? Your story matters, and there is always hope for healing and growth on the other side of betrayal. Leave a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.